my name's Chester. I'll be hosting this afternoon and this morning. I'm with Laurie Good and Alan Flying. Is that the correct pronunciation?
I'm Laurie Good. He's Alan Flying.
So we'll just run through a couple of questions and things here, and then we'll go to the audience if you guys have anything. Yeah, I mean, the main question I kind of had is obviously you guys are in two different Star Wars films, that's correct? At the kind of start of A New Hope, and then at the end of after there was a big influx of fans.
Empire and Return of the Jedi.
Hi, yes, I appeared in Empire Strikes Back and Return of the Jedi. Nice.
And I was in New Hope and The Empire Strikes Back.
So did you notice over the kind of the span of those years from the start of A New Hope to then obviously when the influx of fans and things of the Star Wars franchise kind of happened, did you feel any kind of pressure being in the later films?
No, not to begin with. I mean, the first film was sort of like a bit all over the place, wasn't it? I mean,
I wasn't there.
I wasn't there, but not the first one. But the first one was the stormtroopers, bits and pieces falling around and all this. This is a crummy old film. What's it going to turn out like? Yeah, it was. I don't think they had much money either to begin with.
Some sensational feedback.
Yeah. Sorry about the feedback to everyone, guys. Yeah, I remember I've seen an interview of Harrison Ford saying Millennium Falcon originally didn't have springs in the levers and things, so while they're filming they'd kind of naturally fall down, so they have to push them back up and stuff. And then in the later films that you're in, obviously they had his budget for those springs and things then, or not so much?
No, when I was on the bridge of the Executor on Return of the Jedi, you know, all these guys are frantically flicking switches and not one of them had a spring in. And I'm supposed to start my action leaning over somebody's shoulder watching what they're doing. And I'm just standing there going, luckily the camera wasn't on my face. But I had to turn around very, very quickly. Oh, cutting in and out. And I turned around very quickly to deliver my line. And unfortunately, the jacket I was wearing split right up the back with a dreadful farting sound, which they couldn't get rid of, and I couldn't re-record because I was off the next day to film in Wales. And but that's another whole story, and not the sort of thing you say in front of children.
And did either of you take anything from set, or was there something that you wish you would have taken in retrospect at all?
I have one of Dave Prowse's original helmets. When he found out that he wasn't voicing, he took his helmet off and smashed it against the wall. And because I knew his dresser picked it all up and gave it to me. Still got it in pieces.
She auctioned it. Fortune.
No.
And what about yourself, Laurie? Did you take anything?
No. As I say, it didn't really occur to me to take anything because we didn't know how it was going to turn out. The most important thing in those days is getting to the bar at lunchtime.
And what about any kind of... so you've both been in Stormtrooper armour, is that correct?
Yeah.
And did it fall off for both of you in the start of the franchise and then the end of the originals?
I know I only wore it in Empire Strikes Back. I was fit for 2 weeks and I was on as all sorts of characters, but as a stormtrooper on and off for 7.5 weeks. And our armour was constantly cracking and splitting. And the worst thing about it was very, very thin. And when it split, it used to pinch or even cut, especially behind the legs and under the arms and the chest. I was very big chested, so it was a very tight squeeze for me. So they kept on putting white gaffer tape over these things, saying, well, it'll never show on camera. Little did they know that George Lucas would find out about HD film and have them re-released in HD so you can see every single piece of white gaffer tape in detail.
So, Laurie, you are one of the most iconic stormtroopers, I'd say, from the original trilogy as well, who hit their heads in that iconic scene.
Well, what happened with the headbang is that I had an upset stomach in the morning, and I didn't really want to be put in shock, and so I kept going to the loo and coming back. And Jerry Gogan insisted, put me, so I got to go in shock. So we did these takes of holding the guns in our right hands. And one of the assistants, one of the more astute assistants said, "You've got the guns in the wrong hands, it's got to be in the left hands," because you notice that all the holsters of the stormtroopers are in the left hands. So my stomach's over, and I'm walking along with the gun in my left hand, and we're going for the take, and bang, I hit my head. And I'm waiting to hear someone say, "Cut, cut," and no one said anything. So I thought, well, I've got to go again. And they said, "All right, okay, check the gate, check the camera." And I thought, well, I can't be in shot, so I left it at that. And it came out, I'm in shot. But I think the director didn't realise that the majority of the takes were all in the wrong hand. They had the guns in the right hand, which is the wrong hand. So we had the guns in the left hand, and it was the only take he had with me banging my head with the guns held in the correct way.
And Alan, you've been in costume design since the 80s or so. Do you want to tell us more about that?
That's it.
I started my first film as costume designer the day after I shot that scene in Return of the Jedi. And it was quite funny because I went into Elstree to sign my contract for my first film as a designer, which was a film called Gyro City with Peter Jackson and John Finch. It was the first film which was commissioned for Channel 4, Films on 4. And that was in 1982. The 9th of February, I will remember it very well because my contract was due to start the 10th. And as I walked into the studio, I spotted the first AD standing outside the Star Wars stage, smoking, which I didn't often see him do. And he said, "Oh, Alan," I said, "I'm sorry, I've just got to go in and sign the contract, if you don't mind." And I came out, he was still there. He said, "Can you do us a huge favour?" And I said, "Well, it depends what you're asking." I said, "I've got to get myself to Wales because I start my contract tomorrow." He said, "Oh, it won't be long. It won't be long. You'd do us a huge favour if you'd just come in and put on this uniform and deliver a line, if you don't mind." Now, that was not the way he spoke to anybody, so I knew something was up. I said, "Well, as long as it's very quick, I'll do it." And I went in and he gave me a uniform that was soaking wet with sweat. He stank of fear. And he said, "Get that on." And I tried and I tried and I tried. But the problem was, in those days I was quite muscly. Couldn't get the damn thing on. And they forced me into it. Literally forced me into it. They got it done up. And I was led back to the stage, given this line. They then got me walking all the way around the outside of the stage, shouting this line off. Because apparently, the guy who was cast to do this thing had been flown all the way from the States. And he was a friend of George Lucas. So it was as a favour he'd come over at huge expense. And they'd made this uniform for him. And he was retired to his dressing room, and I was shoved into his suit to actually achieve the line, which I did in one take. I couldn't do any more takes, even though it all went wrong, because, as I said before, I stood with my back to camera. On action, I had to turn around and face the camera, look up, speak into the camera lens, saying, "Sir, we've lost our bridge deflector shields." And as I said this, I took a very deep breath, which split my jacket, top to bottom at the back, with a loud rasp, just like a fart. And it was over my line. And they said, okay, cut. And then the camera focus puller said, "Oh, we've got a hair in the gate," which usually means we've got the focus wrong. So I said, "We'll go again." I said, "Well, I'm afraid you can't." "What?" He said, "You can't. My jacket's split to the back. So I have to start the scene facing the camera." "Oh, no, we can't have that. We must have you facing away from the camera and turning." He said, "Well, I'm sorry, I can't." "Oh, well, we'll get it repaired and we'll go again later." I said, "I'm sorry, I can't." So I'm not here on contract, I'm here as a favour. I've got to get to Wales. Too sweet, I've got to get there. We'll think about it. We'll come up with some way of sorting this out. And if you could just give us... Oh dear.
Sorry about this, everyone.
Maybe if you could give us contact numbers where you're going to be, we'll get back to you and we can organise it. So, well, I doubt it, because I'm actually going to be costume designing. I'm going to be away for 13 weeks. You'll have finished shooting by then. So it was all left in abeyance. But as I tried to go out of the studio, I was directed back into the production office to see George Lucas, who said, "I think you're doing a huge favour for us. Thank you very much." I said, "That's all right, but I must go. I've got to get to my next film." "Oh, well, hold on a minute." He said, "Hey, you can't go yet, because if we can rescue the film and use it, I need your signature on a contract." I said, "That's all right. I'm doing it as a favour." He said, No, I've got to have a contract signed, because otherwise I cannot use it." Oh, okay. So he wrote a handwritten contract in green ink, and I signed it at the table. They took it off and had it photocopied. He kept the photocopy. I've got the original still. And he said, "Yeah, okay, well, thanks very much." And I said, "Nice to have met you again." He said, "Hold on a minute. I've got an envelope here for you. You've got to take this." I said, "Why?" He said, "Because I've got to pay you something for the use of your image and the use of your voice. And as the contract said, I, Alan Flying, assign my voice and my film appearance to Lucasfilms throughout the whole of the known universe." That was the first line of the contract. I mean, how daft is that? So I took the envelope and he said, "Look, take it downstairs, you can get on your way, but don't open it until you get outside." So I went downstairs, out onto the street, Elstree on a roundabout at the top end of Boreham Wood. This railway station was at the very far end of this long road. And I had to negotiate my way down this old Roman road, about a mile and a half, to get my train back to London. But I got outside, stood on the roundabout, opened the envelope, took out a cheque, and according to the people who were all standing at the windows watching me, I was like some sort of comic figure. I jumped in the air, my feet were cycling, and I was already running before I hit the ground, because the cheque that was inside, now remember I'd been on Empire Strikes Back for 7.5 weeks, I made more in the 1 hour that was on Return of the Jedi than I had in the 7.5 weeks I'd been on the other film, which bought my first house cash. So I was very grateful. But it still hadn't all unwound, so there was still more to go on with this. I then drove all the way, got back down to London, got my car, drove all the way to Wales, walked into my production office to meet my producer, who said, "The missing Mr. Flying." I said, "Beg your pardon?" He said, "I've had a phone call from Elstree Studios about you." I said, "Oh." I said, "Yeah, they want you back tomorrow to re-record your part and to do another shoot." And I said, "Well, I told them I was going to be here and I couldn't do it." He said, "Well, to be honest with you," now this is where the naughty words come, so everybody who's got children, put their hands over their ears. He said, "Well, I spoke to this guy and he said his name was George Lucas." And I said, "Oh," and slammed the phone down on him. And phoned back twice more. And the producer said to me, he said, "I employed you as a costume designer, not as an actor. you cannot go back and redo this. I said, fair enough, I'm sorry you've been troubled. But then I heard from the people in the production office at the other end that George Lucas, when the phone was slammed down on him, burst out laughing. They'd never ever seen him absolutely hysterical with laughter like that before. Being told to f off. So there you go.
Thank you.
I just want to, sorry, I just want to go to the audience see if anyone had any specific questions as well. If you want to raise your hand or something, I can come and ask.
Anybody?
Don't all speak at once.
Okay, Laurie, I was going to ask, as you were saying about in the first film, how the production quality wasn't the best, let's say. Did you ever expect Star Wars to become such a big kind of cultural thing from that point?
No, not really, because you didn't see where it was going to fit in. You had a lot of American accents, and then Dave Brown's very strong West Country accent. It's a bit like a comedy, really. And with the bits and pieces falling off the costumes. And the rumour that they didn't have much money, I really thought it was going to not go anywhere. But it did, didn't it? So, yeah, that's all I can say, really. Because, as I say, the costume bits kept falling off, and that's it.
And have either of you kind of, from being in those original films, become a fan of the franchise, or kept up with the films that have come out since, or anything? Would you say?
Well, it's difficult. The first few, they sort of had storylines, but now it's sort of like CGI, isn't it, in the time? I think a lot of people prefer the earlier films.
And Alan, with your career in costume design since then, I'm guessing you learned a lot from being pinched by the plastic stormtrooper armour and the back breaking and stuff. You take a lot of that experience on with you from there, would you say?
Well, yes. I mean, I was already on the periphery doing costumes for Star Wars because I had workrooms. Before going into the studio to sign that contract that day, I had my own workrooms, which were based at the Royal National Theatre, and I was making costumes, including the black jumpsuits for the Black Star, which called
The Death Star.
The Death Star, that's it. So those were all produced in my workrooms, and I actually was fitted in one of my own because they wanted me to wear that first of all in that scene in the carbon chamber, and luckily they said, no, that's the wrong uniform for this set, and they sent me back out to get changed again. But it was quite weird actually being fitted in a costume I'd made for the film. I never expected to see again. I did get to see them again because I used them all again on Richard III. With Ian McKellen as part of the British Army on Richard III's side. So these things come back to haunt us.
And again, to come back to the audience in case anyone's got any moments to think about, any questions?
Anyone there? Any questions? Anyone?
We do have 11 minutes left or so, I just wanted to check if you guys... Oh, yeah. I'll just run over quickly.
So, with the armour, this is back part of this little tube. Did either of you know what that was actually for? Because I heard that's supposed to be for lightsabers, would you like?
I didn't understand what.
I think so. On the back of the costume, there's a tube, stormtrooper armour.
I don't know what that was for. No.
They're just going to put it in randomly then and then.
Yeah, you and that little tube. It's just sort of design, isn't it?
Yeah, I think from my knowledge as well, a lot of the things in the original Star Wars films were just kind of adding trinkets kind of things on, or Greeblies, I think they've been nicknamed since, and then there's been fan theories on them since.
Also, the costume designer of the first Star Wars, who designed the first set of armour, was John Mollo, who I worked with on Revolution and then doing all the Hornblower films. And he was into period uniform. And on the back of soldiers and couriers in the Napoleonic Wars, they wore a little tube on the back of their uniforms, which is where they put messages. So he'd used that detail and put it onto the Stormtrooper's outfit. That's where it comes from.
Anyone else?
Any other questions from the audience still?
Anyone?
Well, I'll ask you guys if you had any other kind of interesting stories, I suppose. Laurie, for sure.
As far as the making of uniforms is concerned, the Imperial officers' uniforms, which were double-breasted, overlapping, they were based on existing uniforms from the Second World War, which were worn by Nazi motorcyclists. So they came out of the stock of Angels in London, and he modified that design. And wanting the same colour fabric, they tracked down the uniform fabric makers who had supplied the Germans since the First World War, including through the Second World War, with the fabric to make those uniforms, which was based in Wales, believe it or not, and they were still supplying the Germans during the whole of the Second World War, and they were sneaking the fabric to Germany by submarine from Ireland. So, a weird and wonderful fact. Oh, the firm is called Abimelech Hainsworth, by the way.
That's definitely interesting to know kind of where the coin came from. Interesting. And so, yeah, sorry to go to the audience one last time. Any other questions at all?
Anyone?
Well, I can't personally think of anything else myself. I just want to thank you both for your time here. And yeah, if anyone wants to get autographs and photo ops and things, head over to their booths over there. And we'll see you again for the next Q&A, which I believe is Tina Simmons and Ron Hone at 12:30. So thanks very much, everyone.
Thank you.